Hey, Enchaunter here, this time talking about the Descent of Lunaris demo. This is a first-person dungeon crawler in the classic style of the older Shin Megami Tensei games, which the developer cite as an inspiration by the way, with a few twists of their own. Now, as I talk about my experience with this demo, keep in mind that it's still very much under development, so things can and will change in the future. And I really hope they do, since I think Descent of Lunaris has a lot of potential, but still has a long way to go before realizing it. As veterans of the channel probably already know, I love games with bizarre, otherworldly art styles and stories. You know, the sort of existential horror that relies on setting up an atmosphere of both dread and wonder instead of setting up jump scares everywhere, and when it comes to gameplay genres, JRPGs are some of my favorites. Descent of Lunaris combines both, so as soon as I watched the trailer, I just knew I had to try it. But before we get to the game itself, let's take a quick peek at the settings menu, shall we? It's a very bare bones settings menu to be honest, which actually led me to at first think this is a Unity game, but surprisingly, Descent of Lunaris seems to be made in Unreal. That's good actually, since indie games made in Unreal are more likely to support ultra-wide resolutions out of the box, and guess what? They actually do! I mean, not officially, but I didn't need to do anything to get it working. The only issue I had is that the HUD doesn't scale properly, so it can get a bit in the way, but it's better than nothing. Other than that, we have VSync, some audio balancing options, motion blur, a single graphics quality setting, and as a pleasant surprise, color blindness options. I personally believe the ability to rebind the controls and set an in-game FPS app are important on every PC game, but overall, I can at least be happy about finding a game with halfway decent ultra-wide support for once. But enough about the settings, an RPG's main draw is its story, so what's the setup here? Well, Earth is ruled, climate change and a general lack of supplies forces humanity to look for alternative fuel sources, and they found it in the form of lunite, a mysterious material discovered on the moon. Everything seemed to be going swimmingly until it suddenly didn't. Communications with the lunar mining outposts were severed, forcing hunters all over the world to band together and send a task force to investigate the issue and deal with it. The demo offers two gameplay sections, the prologue, which acts as a tutorial and introduction to some characters that seem very relevant to the plot, and the first floor of the moon base. As is usual for these sorts of dark, mysterious games, these early sections leave you full of questions and with very little answers, so I don't really have a lot to say about the plot other than the fact that I enjoyed the overall atmosphere and background details set up in the prologue. The prologue starts with a party of 4 predefined actors having their lunite infusion treatment interrupted by an emergency evacuation order. Everything's going crazy and it's their job to help keep everybody else safe. They are immediately attacked by a pair of crazy scientists, leading into the combat tutorial, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I love these character animations. Everyone, even the main characters, seem to be breathing in and out with their whole bodies, inflating and deflating in a highly unnatural way that I'm sure has to be intentional, and it looks so creepy. It's perfect for the tone they seem to be going for. Combat follows one of 2 rule sets. There are formation battles, which are pretty much your standard JRPG battles where everyone lines up and take turns attacking each other. It works fine. There's a decent bit of strategy involved in managing cooldowns, figuring out your enemy's weaknesses, behavior patterns and so on, but the interface seems a bit undecided on how forthcoming it wants to be with information. Enemies have a health bar, but there are no numbers to it. The game always tells you the exact chances of hitting your enemy, but don't tell you how much damage they're likely to receive as a result. When you hit an enemy, the game straight up tells you whether or not your damage type is effective against them, but the interface doesn't keep track of enemy resistances and weaknesses for you. The battle interface sits in this uncomfortable halfway point where it's too transparent to be mysterious but too opaque to be actually helpful, and I don't know, it could just be me, but it felt a little off as a result. Then there's the tactical combat, where the player characters are set up on a grid full of enemies and you have to worry about positioning them, like in Baldur's Gate 3 or Rogue Trader for example, except nowhere as fun. I'm gonna be honest, I just didn't really enjoy this tactical layer. Tactical combat is fun for me when it gives me lots of different tools to interact with and use the environment to my advantage. Stuff like cover, elevation, usable objects, and a wide variety of skills that allow me the freedom to try out different strategies. But the tactical combat layer in Descent of Lunaria offers very little of that. It's still the exact same combat system as before, with the only difference being that characters move around in an empty grid. It's just too shallow, and I hope I don't sound overly harsh in saying this, but every time I noticed I was about to enter into a tactical battle, I felt a little bit of dread, not because I was afraid of the challenge, but because I knew I was in for 5 to 10 minutes of forced boredom, interrupting what was a rather enjoyable dungeon crawl. And going around the dungeon really was very enjoyable. The environments in the demo look great, following this retro aesthetic of CRT monitors and floppy disks everywhere. The lighting is very atmospheric and the rooms actually look like places where people lived and worked, full of little details like shelves and other furniture. There are documents and NPCs scattered all throughout the map, which shed some cryptic light on what's happening, but it didn't seem like anything I found ever got added to the journal. This is a minor suggestion, but I really wish there was a log for me to go back to and check them later when I start trying to piece everything together. There's also what I'm pretty sure is a branching choice at the end of the demo, which I won't spoil, but was more than enough to leave me curious as to what's going to happen in the lower floors. Encounters aren't random in the sense that they spawn periodically, you can see their silhouettes moving around the environment and even try to evade them if you want. There's also a sanity mechanic where the longer you stay in the dungeon, the more difficult and crazier the enemies get, forcing you to pace yourself or risk getting overwhelmed by monsters. To restore your sanity, you have to go back to headquarters where you can get healed for free, buy and sell items, and manage your party, which in the main game is fully customizable. You can create up to 9 characters, one of each class, and combine them any way you want in a party of 4. Their attributes and skills are also shaped by you, as they receive 3 stat points and 1 skill point every level. Just like I love the enemy design, the character classes also look awesome. The aesthetics in this game are something I just cannot criticize. The good guys all look stylish, the demons all look crazy and twisted, and the environments have this high fidelity look you would expect from an Unreal Engine game. Overall, it's just great. The UI, on the other hand, needs a lot of work on 2 fronts. First, it's just not very good in terms of how it's organized. I consistently felt myself having to button over 1 or 2 extra layers of menus whenever I wanted to do almost anything. For example, whenever I bought new equipment, instead of being given the option to immediately equip someone, I had to first leave the shop and enter the barracks before being allowed to select a character and equip it to them. Second, the controller UI is just broken. Everything worked fine with a mouse, but as soon as I tried to use a D-pad to navigate around the menus, all hell broke loose, especially when trying to manage my party in the barracks. And that's it. The demo is somewhat long, but most of it is exploring orders and fighting monsters, which, while fun, doesn't make for great video content. Still, even if I seem to be down on several parts of the game, I wanna be clear, there's a very good core in here with the right inspirations and lots of potential. It just needs more polish, and I look forward to seeing all the improvements the developers come up with for the full release. Anyway, that's enough from me for now. That was the Descent of Lunaris demo. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, feedback is appreciated. Bye bye!